The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The South Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Hello folks, welcome back to South Kesteven. I've got a nice little run out here in South Kesteven for you this week. And there's going to be a certain military theme to this week, to be honest with you, for the first couple of episodes anyway, because around here there were a lot of soldiers and airmen who were present in World War II. We'll talk a bit more about that maybe tomorrow. But here you can see we have a memorial. This memorial is on the edge of an old airfield, and that airfield can be found in Fulbeck. Fulbeck, foul stream. This week on TVI we're ticking off another 5 in South Kesteven, and we're in an area between Grantham and Sleaford again. There are a number of little villages that lie between them, and although we've seen some already, there are still a few more to capture. The ones that remain are among the prettiest too. That description certainly fits Fulbeck, despite the fact its name suggests there was a horrible stream here at one time which smelt quite bad. If there is now, it's not noticeable. Fulbeck lies on the A607, 9 miles away from Grantham. To the north is the A17 and the border with North Kesteven at Leadenham. This is a typical Kesteven stone village, similar to Ropsley and the Rawsby twins, and it's laid out in a rectangular shape around the church, right in the middle of it all. Grade 1 listed and dating originally from the 10th century, Fulbeck's church is considered to be one of the finest in Lincolnshire. In it are many monuments to members of the Fane family who lived virtually next door at Fulbeck Hall. They owned that property from 1622 onwards. West of the village, the landscape becomes a lot more open and flatter. Fulbeck itself is actually on a hill. The flat nature of the ground to the west meant it was perfect for the building of an RAF base. Today, that former airfield is used for other things, most notably kart racing, but at one time it was being considered for nuclear waste disposal. That never materialised though. We'll talk about that as we explore Fulbeck. There's also a cross to see, a pub to see, a village hall to see, but above all, there's a characterful village to admire. Let's go. We start in the west of the parish at RAF Fulbeck, a former World War II airfield that was used by Lancaster bomber squadrons. It was opened in 1940 when it was used by both the RAF and the US Air Force. During the war, it was used primarily as a troop carrier airfield for airborne units. After the war, it was closed in 1948. Its initial role was a satellite to RAF Syerston near Newark from 1940 until October 1943, and that's when the Americans arrived. Specifically, it was the 434th Troop Carrier Group who came from Indiana. There was little activity at Fulbeck in the following year until it was used as part of Operation Market Garden. Operation Market Garden was fought in the German-occupied Netherlands from the 17th to the 25th of September 1944. The RAF moved back in afterwards, and Fulbeck was to become the base for No. 49 Squadron after they relocated from Fiskerton. No. 189 Squadron moved in here too. Bomber command operations from Fulbeck cost some 38 Lancasters, which either failed to return or were destroyed in crashes. And on the theme of crashes, one of them occurred at Fulbeck itself. In 1945, a Lancaster from 49 Squadron took off from Fulbeck bound for Syerston. Shortly after liftoff, it caught fire and crashed into a depot. All 6 crew and 15 people on the ground died in the accident. Fulbeck's runways, apart from narrow strips now used as farm roads, were all removed in the 1970s. Small sections of the runway ends do still exist in their full width. The rest of the runways are now occupied by other things. Fulbeck karting circuit uses sections of one runway for racing on. In 1986, RAF Fulbeck was a proposed site for nuclear waste disposal. If it had have gone ahead, today there would be a deep underground storage facility here. Geological investigations took place as part of the plans for the facility, but the whole thing was abandoned in 1987. Now let's drive into Fulbeck using Brant Road. The airfield is a long way out of the village. The road linking the two is at least 1.5 miles long, if not more. This will take us past Fulbeck Waters, which is a campsite and a fishery, ideal for anyone who likes either, or indeed both. Seeing as we have some time to kill using this lane otherwise, let's fill in a bit more about the place we're about to come to. Fulbeck covers about 3,800 acres, which includes the village and the rich farmland that surrounds it. It extends west to the River Brant and east almost to Ermine Street. It includes a small hamlet called Sudthorpe, which is on a dead end near the southern end of the main high street. In 1871 there was a year-round spring called Holywell, located a mile to the east of the village. Here on the western edge of the parish was a Chalibut spring. Water has always been plentiful around Fulbeck, not that it was always desirable. The village name literally means foul stream. That would suggest it was founded on a dirty or smelly watercourse, which thankfully doesn't exist anymore. If it does, it's not obvious. Anyway, our first landmark in the village is water related too. Okay, here we are then in Fulbeck village. As you can see, I've bagged myself a nice shady spot to park the car in. It's going to be quite warm today. It's going to be up to about 29, maybe 30 degrees. We'll see. I'm fully prepared. Sunglasses, hat, all that kind of stuff. So let's have a walk around Fulbeck then. And I'm led to believe this is quite the lovely little village from the research I've done before coming here. Let's see, shall we? Before hitting the village, Brant Road becomes Scott's Hill. Now on foot, we're heading down this towards its junction with the High Street. Where the two roads meet is a water pump complete with a lovely little wooden canopy. This has been here since the late 19th century and it has a date stone to back that up. An inscription round the inside of the pump cover features a poetic verse which rhymes. It reads as follows: "His nearest kin this sheltering structure raised to grace the memory of his kindly thought, a well-loved neighbour in his closing days, hither a sparkling water freely brought." Stones at the base of the pump carry the date 1891 and the initials HPF. Keep those initials in mind, they will become more important later. Let's head down the high street and straight away you get a good sense of the village we're in. Located on a hillside, it's full of tight narrow lanes. It's like stepping back in time 150 years or so. A small village between Lincoln and Grantham, Fulbeck was mentioned in the Domesday Book, where it was called Fullerbeck. Together with the neighbouring village of Leadenham, it formed part of the honour of Richmond and consisted of scattered holdings, generally all in the hands of the Earls of Richmond. It's always been an agricultural village. The main settlement sits within some lush farmland where cereal crops were, and still are, grown extensively. Wheat and barley are the main ones today. Fulbeck offers visitors beautiful stone architecture, tranquil lanes and sweeping countryside views, making it one of the most picturesque villages in Lincolnshire. Well, Fulbeck is certainly not a flat village, and the high street there, just walk down it. Literally, we've walked downhill, so we're at quite a low level here compared to the pump, which is at the top of the high street. Now, here there's a junction. As you can see, you can go four ways. You can go up the high street, or you can go this way, or that way, or indeed this way. And we're actually going to go in all four directions. At the end of the high street, we reach Washdyke Lane. This little lane that continues south heads towards Sudthorpe, the dead end we mentioned earlier. It's little more than just a cul-de-sac really. So instead we'll concentrate on Washdyke Lane instead. This takes its name from the practice of sheep dipping, where farmers would wash their livestock in a stream or a purpose-built pool. If you go up Washdyke Lane to the west, you'll pass a building that used to be Fulbeck's Primitive Methodist Chapel. This is the building in question. As you can see, this is now a double garage next to number 18. This dates from 1825 originally, but it was either rebuilt or restored in 1899. It closed in 1987, becoming the garages it is today. Methodism has had a presence in Fulbeck since 1820, when the first society was formed. They got their chapel 5 years later. Let's head back eastwards now as we make for a footpath that will take us towards the A607, the main road on which Fulbeck sits. Now, in recent times, Fulbeck has gained a bit of a reputation for being a centre of arts and crafts. Next to see is a craft centre, based within the former manor stables. Fulbeck Craft Centre, which includes something called the Crafty Cafe, prides itself on being an original retail, learning and food experience, as well as being a visitor attraction. The centre promotes craft production and artisan skills in an ethical and environmentally responsible way. It's open to the public, who can come and see the craftspeople in action. It's a group of buildings in the grounds of Fulbeck Manor. These would have been workshops housing coaches, horses and tack for the occupiers of the manor. The stables were originally designed in the early 1900s and have now been lovingly restored to host local crafters who make and sell their own products and teach their skills on site. The old coach house store, which forms part of the group, boasts a wide selection of unique and beautiful gifts. The crafters who work here are always happy to show you their skills and techniques and talk about their work too. Call in if you're passing, you won't be disappointed. Well, a certain wife of mine, I'm sure, would enjoy the Fulbeck Craft Centre, but I'm on my own this morning, so yeah, I don't have Nikki with me to explore the centre. Never mind, it doesn't matter. Let's continue around this walk. In front of the Craft Centre here, you've got this gorgeous little green with a few trees on it and a bench as well, which you can see there. And the road in front of us there is the main road that goes through Fulbeck. Our next couple of landmarks are off this. Fulbeck's Village Hall is next as we emerge from that footpath onto the A607 Cliff Road. This used to be a national school, but it's also had a few other uses. Originally it was a workhouse before becoming a school, and before that it was even used as a makeshift hotel or holding place for criminals being transported south to London. As a school it didn't last long. This became a village hall in 1896 and it's stayed that way ever since. For almost 130 years therefore, this has been serving the community. Let's talk sport for a while next. On the other side of the A607 we have the Fulbeck Sports and Social Club and the massive playing field it sits on the edge of. Fulbeck has two football clubs with distinct histories. Fulbeck United, formed in 1926, play in the Lincolnshire League. Then there's Caythorpe and Fulbeck Junior Football Club, which was established in 1995 by the merger of the junior clubs from both villages. It focuses on youth football. Both clubs are affiliated with the Lincolnshire FA. The youth side offers football for over 100 players across 8 age groups, from under 7s to under 18s. Fulbeck also established a girls team in 2004, which grew to 3 teams by 2006. Everyone is covered here. Now, cricket is played here too, and this has been here since at least 1860. In the early days, Fulbeck Cricket Club played an annual fixture with the famous Free Foresters. During World War II, the ground was used for cricket by the British Armed Forces, as well as baseball by the American GIs stationed at RAF Fulbeck. The ground, incidentally, used to be a farmer's field. It was used for grazing cows until it was bought in 1965 by the Fulbeck Playing Field Committee, meaning it could be properly maintained. It's now one of the best kept village grounds in Lincolnshire. Purpose-built changing rooms were added at the same time, replacing 2 wooden sheds which stood here previously. In 1980, the Fulbeck Sports Club was formed, and that gave the playing fields a licensed bar for the first time. The wall, the iron gateway and the railings you can see here next all belong to Fulbeck Hall. That occupies a prominent position in the north of the village. We can't see it because it's shrouded in trees and foliage, but Fulbeck Hall was, and still is, the principal residence here. Let's learn a bit more about it. Fulbeck Hall since 1632 has been the home of the Fane family. It's been much altered since those days. Mostly it's built in a classically inspired style of the 18th century. It dates back to at least the Elizabethan period, though most of the Tudor features are hidden behind a neoclassical facade. It does still retain a Tudor wing and some large Tudor cellars. The hall was purchased in 1622 by Francis Fane, the first Earl of Westmoreland, from Sir George Manners. Manners, though, would remain in residence until he became the 7th Earl of Rutland in 1632, at which point the Earl's son, also Sir Francis Fane, moved in. Sir Francis Fane Jr. was a courtier, a royalist and a commander of the King's forces at Doncaster in Lincoln. This made him a key figure in the Civil War. Before the restoration of Charles II in 1660, he and his wife, Elizabeth Darcy, occupied much of their time in rebuilding the hall in the Restoration style. It was burned down on the 30th of December 1731, but was rebuilt again 2 years later. Now, only the back wings and the cellars survive from the original house. Fane's son, yet another Sir Francis, was married to Hannah Rushworth, the daughter of the MP John Rushworth. He was a private secretary to Oliver Cromwell. Rushworth was a Republican and historian who's credited with drafting the bill that abolished the monarchy, the House of Lords, and established England as a republic. Many of his works and words were used by Thomas Jefferson when he drafted the American Declaration of Independence. In 1767, Fulbeck Hall was left to Henry Fane, who'd already amassed a fortune as a successful privateer and owned several estates in Oxfordshire, Dorset, Somerset and Lincolnshire. His eldest son, Thomas, the 8th Earl of Westmoreland, inherited many of them, making him one of the richest landowners in England. Fulbeck was among them. On his death, Fulbeck Hall would be inherited by his son, the MP Henry Fane. He was a clerk in the Treasury and a keeper of the King's private roads, gates and bridges. During the 19th century, the house was occupied by another Henry Fane, this time a general who was the MP for Lyme Regis and Commander-in-Chief to India. His nephew, General Walter Fane, who raised a regiment of volunteers to fight in China during the Second Opium War, succeeded him at Fulbeck Hall. That regiment still exists, by the way, as part of Pakistan's armed forces today. In the early 20th century, the house was home to Colonel William Vere Reeve King Fane. Now, if you've managed to follow all of that, well done. You should at least now be able to understand the initials on the pump we saw earlier, HPF, referring of course to Henry Fane. During World War II, Fulbeck Hall was requisitioned by the Army, and it was to be the base for the 1st Airborne Division before they left the United Kingdom for the Battle of Arnhem. There's still an Arnhem museum at the house commemorating the soldiers based in the house during the war. The contents of Fulbeck Hall were sold by Sotheby's in October 2002. Included in the sale were letters and mementos given by the Duke of Wellington to two members of the Fane family. Namely, they were Harriet Fane, better known as the early 19th century diarist Mrs. Arbuthnot, and her cousin, Lady Georgiana. So you can actually see a little bit of Fulbeck Hall through these very ornate gates, by the way, which mark its entrance, but mostly it is shrouded in trees. You can just about see it there, but a lot of foliage in the way. So next to cover is the church. So if we turn around at this point and head south again, you can see on the right hand side there we've got a lit gate that'll take us towards Fulbeck's church, one of the finest in Lincolnshire, this. So now we come to the church, a Grade 1 listed Anglican building dedicated to St Nicholas. This is considered to be one of Lincolnshire's finest churches. Originating from the 10th century, it's had plenty of further additions and changes right up until the 18th century. It was last restored in 1888 and bears those Victorian marks heavily. In the chancel is a restored 13th century sedilia, while on the opposite wall is a medieval tomb niche holding a 16th century parish chest. A pair of chancel seats have medieval misericords, and set into the north wall of the nave behind the pulpit is a section of a 12th century arcade. Both north and south doorways are 14th century, while the heavy oak south door itself dates to the 14th century too. Overall, it retains a variety of styles from Norman to Perpendicular, and it still has its transitional Norman font. The tower has 8 crocketed pinnacles, which look rather nice, you'll maybe agree. St Nicholas's can hold around 356 people at full capacity. Speaking of people, within the church are many monuments to the Fane family of Fulbeck Hall. Out onto the village green in front of the church we have another historic feature, a medieval cross. Only the base and the shaft of this are original. They date from the 14th century, whilst the head is from a Victorian restoration. Even so, the cross is a brilliant little landmark and complements the green nicely. The last thing to see on the walk is the local pub. This is the Hare and Hounds, a Grade 2 listed building originating from the 17th century. It began its life as a farmhouse before becoming the pub it is now. It's surrounded by a loose courtyard with its four sides formed of working agricultural buildings. It's made of limestone rubble with hints of ashlar and brick, much like the rest of Fulbeck village. It has a few 18th and 19th century alterations, but in general it's the same as it's always been. To get back to the car, we're using Rectory Lane, where the properties become more and more spaced out the further west you walk. This meets Bulby Lane at its end, where we'll turn left and head back to Brant Road, close to its junction with Washdyke Lane and Scots Hill. What a wonderful little amble that's been. Okay, we've almost made it all the way around Fulbeck village. We're just coming downhill yet again to get back to the start and that little shady spot where I left the car about an hour ago. Now, when I was in the churchyard just there, I had a chance meeting with the guy who gave me that little photo at the end of the Newark episode. If you're a long-time viewer, you'll remember the Newark episode. If you're not a long-time viewer and you haven't seen the Newark episode, for you, I will put Newark in today's end screen so you can maybe watch that one after you've watched this one. We're almost finished with this village, like I said, but we do have a little bit of driving to do before we wrap it all up. There's one particular area of Fulbeck we haven't touched on this walk. There is one last little bit of Fulbeck the walk didn't cover, and that's the area to the north of the Hall. We can get a look at that though via today's drive out. North of the Hall is North End Lane, a clutch of houses that sit around a secondary village green, albeit one that's kind of unofficial. It's a nice area though, very picturesque. That's it for Fulbeck, and now we're heading to the south, deeper into South Kesteven. If you thought this place was pretty cool, tomorrow's is even better. See you there, everyone. Welcome back to South Kesteven again, everybody. Now, I know out there I've got a couple of people who live in the Netherlands. I've got some Dutch viewers. I think there's only 2 or 3 of you. But you guys will be very interested in this particular episode, because in this village, we're going to be talking a little bit about a certain town that you can find in the Netherlands called Arnhem. This is Caythorpe. Caythorpe, Katie's farm. Today on TVI we come to a village called Caythorpe. It's the second time we've met one with this name. The last time we were in Nottinghamshire, not far from the banks of the Trent. This one's a little different. For a start, we're nowhere near any major rivers. Caythorpe in Lincolnshire is close to the A17 and the border with North Kesteven, right at the northern edge of the area covered by South Kesteven. It's 9 miles away from Grantham, but Sleaford is actually nearer to the east. This village is best known for two things. First of all, this was the place during World War II where the soldiers that took place in Operation Market Garden were based. Market Garden was part of the Battle of Arnhem, and in September every year, the survivors from that conflict return to Caythorpe for Arnhem Weekend. It includes a church service, a gala, and a parade involving the veterans. Nothing now remains of the former paratrooper HQ, named Holy Cross House. A small housing estate stands on the site of that today. The other thing that Caythorpe is known for is to the east of the village, a long way away from the centre of civilization. On the parish boundary almost stands Caythorpe Court. Originally built as a hunting lodge, it was used in the war as an auxiliary hospital before in 1946 being turned into the Kesteven Agricultural College, the only college of its type in southwest Lincolnshire. The school was closed in 2002, after which the building became a PGL activity centre, and that's how it remains today. Caythorpe has several other bits to discuss. It's not all about wartime history here, but it does dominate proceedings. Let's go. We start on Chapel Lane in the centre of Caythorpe village. The main landmarks here are clustered around one area bounded by the High Street to the west and the A607 to the east. On the High Street are both of Caythorpe's pubs. Kicking us off is the Wagon and Horses, a family-friendly country local with fabulous food, a large beer garden and real ales. As well as being a pub, the Wagon and Horses also doubles up these days as an Indian and Nepalese restaurant called Gurkha Square. Hopping across the road, we next find the Caythorpe and Ancaster Medical Practice. This serves a population of around 10,000 patients spread across approximately 50 local villages. Heading north, the building on the right next is the old post office. This was still going till a few years ago. It closed in 2016, but Caythorpe still has a post office today. I'll show you where later. Here's the other pub, the Red Lion, another 17th century country inn, although its history as a tavern dates back to the 15th century. Like the Wagon and Horses, the building was originally a house, and it's undergone a series of 19th and 20th century additions and alterations. Some original features do remain though, including a 2-light glazing bar casement window still in its 17th century moulded stone surround. It still has an inscribed stone plaque dated 1650. That has the initials TC on it, clearly belonging to the builder of the time. Today, the Red Lion is a popular pub and restaurant known for its quality food and drink, warm atmosphere and traditional charm. You can't ask for a lot more in a pub these days. Now here's a peculiar fact. Caythorpe used to have 2 pubs called the Red Lion. What makes that even more astounding is that they were right next door to each other. The one that you see here was the older of the 2. The other one, which stood next to it, was demolished in 1965. I guess this one was built to last. Okay, we're heading for the church next, and between here and there's a couple of things on the other side of the road. One of them is a hair salon, which is number 69 behind this van here. It's called Fox, and next door to that we have Charisma Community Care Services, whatever that may be. Now, speaking of care, at the end of the road, that building there is the other thing between here and the church. At the end of the high street is a building which, to my mind, looks like it could have been another pub at one time. If it was, it certainly isn't now. This is Caythorpe Residential Home at number 77, which can accommodate up to 14 people aged 65 or over in one adapted and extended building. At the junction stands the church, a 14th century and Grade 1 listed building dedicated to St Vincent of Saragossa. There are only 3 other churches in England that carry that dedication. It's one of the most peculiar churches we've ever seen too. That's because it has a wide double nave divided by geometric or early decorated piers. The central tower supports a crocketed spire rising to 156 feet, making this church one of the most recognisable in the area from a long distance. It used to be taller. The spire was restored by Gilbert Scott after being struck by lightning in 1859 and was rebuilt some 12 feet shorter than it was beforehand. Besides the double nave and the spire, the church includes a north aisle added in the 19th century, stained glass windows, and memorials to those who served in World War I and World War II. Monuments found here include some to members of the Hussey family dated 1698 and 1725, and over the tower arch are remains of paintings of the Last Judgment. St Vincent's also has a cross, last restored in 1906, and that's a scheduled monument. Now, the North Aisle is sometimes referred to as the Arnhem Aisle because this church has a strong wartime connection. During 1944, the 1st Airborne Signals Regiment was formed with approximately 450 men. The first major battle they became engaged in was Operation Market Garden. That saw them battle for the bridges of Arnhem in the Netherlands. The regiment was based in and around Caythorpe for training prior to the operation. The squadron was stationed in Caythorpe before the battle, and after the war the village became the spiritual home of the 216 Parachute Signal Squadron too. In the grounds there's a large boulder of Falkland Island stone with a memorial plaque dedicated to the airborne signallers. The Battle of Arnhem and the soldiers who fought in it arguably are the biggest things Caythorpe is known for. Survivors of the battle return to the village every September along with the 216 Signals Regiment for something called Arnhem Weekend. It involves a service held in St Vincent's Church which is followed by a gala and a parade through the village of the veterans and soldiers. This started almost immediately after the war when a few survivors of the operation started visiting Caythorpe on the anniversary of Arnhem to remember lost comrades. As time passed by, the event became officially recognised and the regiments hold this modern-day equivalent annually for both Arnhem and several other conflicts since. The soldiers were all based in and around the village in various properties. Some of them still stand, others don't. We'll see where a couple of them are, and indeed were, as we continue around the place. And of course, Caythorpe doesn't just remember the Arnhem soldiers, it remembers everybody from this village who fought in the 2 World Wars. And outside the church here, you can see we have the war memorial. It's a cross, and very nice it is too. It's right next to the Falklands stone, actually, so all the memorials are kind of together where they should be. Right, let's return to the walk. Next, we have a school to talk about. Back to the route. Outside the church on the other side of the road is a former school. This was built in 1839 and was the only school in the village until 1875. More on this later. Caythorpe has 2 grand mansions to speak of. One of them sits to the north of the church and once commanded a huge parkland area to the east. That would be Caythorpe Hall. A Grade 2 listed country house, these are its entrance gates and lodges. Caythorpe Hall was built in 1823 by William Parsons for Colonel George Hussey Pack. It replaced an older moated manor house. The Hussey family, who previously owned the old manor, have a long association with Caythorpe. Colonel George Hussey Pack, who served at the Battle of Waterloo, commissioned the building and later developed the Great Northern Railway. Built in the Regency style, Caythorpe Hall is a 2-storey stone mansion with a hipped slate roof and a Roman-style Ionic portico. As for the parkland, that's been greatly reduced over the past 100 years. It occupied an area between the hall and the A607. Nicholas Pevsner once claimed that only the magnificent brick walls of the park remain today, although the park wall is not of brick, but instead of local stone. The next area is all to do with sports. In a small quadrilateral piece of land bounded to the east by the A607, we find the sports field anchored by Caythorpe Cricket Club. You may recall the immaculate cricket ground in Caythorpe's namesake Nottinghamshire village. Here in Lincolnshire, this club is known far less, it would seem. The ground has a pavilion occupied by the Caythorpe and Freeston Sports and Social Club, which runs a members' bar. The social club meet every month, and in effect it's a small enterprise whose profits are ploughed back into the playing field and the sports teams which use it. For example, in the past, the club has helped fund new children's play equipment and an annual fireworks display. Every month, the social club makes a payment of £250 to the playing field for the use of the bar in the pavilion. Next to pass on the edge of the playing field is Caythorpe's police office as we start to make our way south. The road we're on here is called Old Lincoln Road. This would have been the main north to south route through Caythorpe before the A607 was built. In 1900, this part of the village was little more than just a collection of fields, split into two bits by the line of the Old Lincoln Road. It's got a little more built up since then. Caythorpe hasn't seen a massive expansion like some other villages of its size perhaps, but it's still a lot bigger than it was 100 years ago. So much so that these days it's absorbed another hamlet. We're on our way here to Freeston, once separated from Caythorpe by fields and lanes, but now they're like conjoined twins. Before we leave Caythorpe momentarily though, we still have some things to see as we rejoin the high street, this time heading south. There's a lot of tree cover in this particular part of Caythorpe. That's good because it's providing me with a bit of shade at the moment. Temperature keeps going up and up and up. I'm going to be walking away from these trees next though, because at this point here, where we see some new houses, there's a footpath on the right hand side, and this is where we're going next. This will take us towards a school and a shop. Caythorpe used to have at least two other pubs alongside the two Red Lions and the Wagon and Horses. One of them was called the Eight Bells. That was on the corner of the High Street and Chapel Lane. It closed in 1998 and now has been converted into a private residence called the Old Eight Bells Inn. This next building did the same thing. This is the former Sun Inn at the other end of the High Street. This is now a house too, but it was lost a long time before the Eight Bells. It closed in 1912. Caythorpe Primary School is next. Education in Caythorpe can be traced back to at least 1839, when that small parish school near the church was built by a man called Mr. Pack. This would replace it. It originally was a public elementary school built in 1875 and enlarged in 1894 and 1900. It was designed to cater for 150 children. In 2017, after a change in its status and governance structure, this became a converter academy, evolving from the original Caythorpe Primary School. Call it what you want though, the school is described as a happy place where its children are cared for within a supportive and secure environment. Virtually next door is the village shop, a Spar store, which today is where the post office is based after moving from further up the high street almost a decade ago. Over the road we have the village hall. Now this hasn't been a village hall for very long, it was converted into one just a few years ago. What was it beforehand then? Well, a few things. As you can probably tell, it's been here for quite a while. The stonework and architectural style shouts rather loudly 18th or 19th century at you. During World War II, this building was vitally important to the Arnhem soldiers. It served as a workshop for a blacksmith and a boot repairer, but also as a billet. Upstairs at the back there was a nappy room. The village hall wasn't the only building in this bit of Caythorpe that had a connection to wartime soldiers. Far from it, in fact. If you walk down the road a bit further, you'll see why. Just before we get to what that's all about, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you about the bus services that run through Caythorpe. I had a comment the other day which basically said, yeah, you don't talk about bus services anymore. Well, you know what? Just for you, whoever that was, I'll do it here in this episode. There's a bus stop right here, not far from the Spar shop, and here you can catch the number 1. Which goes to Lincoln via Fulbeck, Wellingborough, Navenby, Boothby, Grafo, Colby, Harmston and Waddington. I do believe we have mentioned this service before. In all of those places, actually, apart from Fulbeck, we've definitely seen all of those villages. If you haven't seen them, you know where to find them. This is a small housing estate consisting of 3 streets: Lime Grove, Arnhem Drive and Holy Cross Gardens. Where this estate stands, there was a property called Holy Cross House. That's where the 216 Paratrooper Squadron were based. Now no longer standing, Holy Cross House was known to be haunted, not by anyone from the military, but instead by the mysterious Grey Lady. Now we're in Freeston, once little more than a small hamlet that flanked Caythorpe to the south. Today it's joined to it thanks to some later 20th century expansion. Freeston and Caythorpe have been linked together for admin purposes since 1974, when local government reorganisation changed the landscape of Britain as a whole. It's believed that the name Freeston is derived from the Frisians, who are known to have settled in Britain during the 5th and 6th centuries AD. However, their numbers were small when compared to the much larger Anglo-Saxon population. That said, they must have been pretty populous here. There are 2 Freestons in Lincolnshire, the other one is in Boston, not too far from where we are actually. You may also recall Frisby-on-the-Reek in Leicestershire too, which also had connections to them. That's just over the border into Melton in the other direction. Freeston hasn't changed much since the 1900s. Although it has far more houses than it did in those days, the layout and feel of the place is the same. Old maps show there was once a cross sited somewhere close to the grandest house in the hamlet, Freeston House at the western end. The village is centred on a lovely green, giving it a focal point. Surrounding it are houses of varying dates, but it's easy to see what's been here the longest. Freeston was the home of Edmund Weaver, an 18th century astronomer and land agent. He's buried at St Vincent's Church in Caythorpe and has a memorial in the south chancel. Weaver was best known for the British telescope ephemerides, a posh word meaning astronomical tables. They are considered an important 18th century publication on the movement of planets. Self-taught, after writing the ephemerides, the antiquarian William Stukely described him as a very uncommon genius who'd made himself a master in astronomy. It was through association with Weaver that Stukely developed an interest in astronomy himself. Weaver's writing was also appreciated by Martin Folkes, the president of the Society of Antiquaries. Weaver supported a heliocentric view of the universe, opposing criticism of the accuracy of ephemerides formulated by Edmund Halley, the Astronomer Royal. Now, as a land surveyor, Weaver was also pretty famous too. In 1734, he printed proposals for making and publishing a survey of the county of Lincoln. The project was started but unfinished, with only a map and measurements of certain roads and bearings between places. The proposed survey of Lincolnshire was supposed to have included all wapentakes, churches, chapels, religious houses, chases and parks, notable houses, castles and nobility. It would have covered all parishes, settlements, waterways, bridges and roads, and would have been fully indexed, all carried out with contemporary technological equipment. Now, does that not sound like someone you might know? I couldn't help but think when reading about him that he was a bit like me. Alright, now to get back into Caythorpe, we're using a footpath which then becomes Back Lane. In times past, Back Lane was simply that, a back lane with nothing on it. It was the road that folks would use to access the rear of their properties, which all faced the high street, and it was little more than just an access track. It still sort of serves the same purpose, only now it serves the rear of the school, and there are some houses on it at the northern end. When we reach the top, we'll be at the chapel, which gives Chapel Lane, where we began, its name. See you there shortly. Always amazes me how fast a village can grow. Everything you just seen there on Back Lane just simply wasn't there 100 years ago. One thing that was certainly here 100 years ago though was this building here at the end of Back Lane. This is where it meets Chapel Lane, which you remember is the road we started on, and that there is the chapel in question. So here's the chapel, which was used by the Wesleyan Methodists when it was operational. It was opened in 1850 and closed in 1982, being subsequently converted into a shop. The building is made of stone and has a gabled roof. It has pointed segmental window arches with yellow brick jambs and decorative brick buttresses. This building is thought to have replaced an earlier chapel built in 1824, though the exact location of that former chapel is unknown. The rest of this walk sees us take in the residential areas to the north and west of the chapel as we form a loop around Gorse Hill Road and Waterloo Lane before rejoining Church Lane. Waterloo Lane gets its name thanks to Colonel Hussey Pack, named in honour of his service in the battle itself. These lanes are ancient, having been here for several centuries, but in much the same way as Back Lane, they were never built up to their modern extent. This is therefore a collection of 20th century housing now, with a handful of older, sporadically placed older buildings here and there. Let's wander around this to finish off. I'll see you back at the High Street. So we're not quite at the High Street here, we're still on the road that leads down towards the church. There's some nice houses in this particular part of Caythorpe. Check these out. These are all lovely. All around you actually. Brilliant, aren't they? Caythorpe's a great village. Absolutely love it for its architectural styles. I'm not a very good person when it comes to architecture, to be honest with you. That's more Nikki's forte, not mine, but I still can appreciate a decent building when I see one. Oh, speaking of decent buildings, look, it's the church again. So we have almost made it around Caythorpe. We're just going to turn onto the High Street now and then back onto Chapel Lane, and that will take us back to the car. However, we are not quite finished with Caythorpe yet, because earlier you'll remember I mentioned that Caythorpe has two grand mansions to talk about. We've talked a bit about Caythorpe Hall. What about Caythorpe Court? To finish this episode off, we have two things to see that are east of the village. One of them is the former Caythorpe railway station. Caythorpe station was built to serve the village of the same name. It was on the Grantham and Lincoln line and was built by the Great Northern Railway. The station closed for passengers in 1962, for goods in 1964, and the line closed completely in 1965 as part of the beaching cuts. The site now houses a recycling centre for household waste. The line, which opened in 1867, ran through land which was owned by the GNR chairman, George Hussey Pack. Pack's land was the first in southwest Lincolnshire to be mined for iron ore. Open cast workings were either side of the line and used narrow gauge links to railheads on the line itself. Lastly, we have Caythorpe Court, a Grade 2 listed former hunting lodge situated about 1 mile to the east of the village, almost on the parish boundary. It was built in 1901 for Edgar Lubbock, a brewer and a banker, to the designs of Sir Reginald Blomfield. The site was originally occupied by a farm which was owned by the church. In 1899, Lubbock instructed Blomfield to design a hunting lodge in the grounds of the farm. It was called Mansion House to start with, but by 1904 it had acquired the name Caythorpe Court. Lubbock died in 1907, and following his death the house was acquired by Elmer Yerborough, who controlled the Blackburn-based Thwaites Brewery. Yerborough owned several properties, and Caythorpe Court was the smallest, being referred to by her as the cottage. During her ownership, the gardens were redesigned by Percy Kane. During World War I, the property was used as an auxiliary military hospital, and in World War II it became the headquarters for the 1st Airborne Division Signal Squadron. Yerborough never saw her house again, dying in December 1946, but her will requested that the estate should be sold to become an agricultural education establishment. The will also mentioned that the main building should be maintained as near as possible in their original condition. That same year, her first wish became a reality. Caythorpe Court became the Kesteven Agricultural College. In the 1960s, student halls of residence were built in the grounds of the original house. The new buildings were named after local towns: Stamford, Grantham, Lincoln and Sleaford. Later, another complex consisting of Boston, Brownlow, Bourne and Louth were built too. In 1980, it amalgamated with two other agricultural colleges, Holbeach and Riceholme. At that point, it became the Lincolnshire College of Agriculture and Horticulture. In 1994, it became part of the Leicester-based De Montfort University. The site was closed in 2002 and sold to property developers who proposed to use it to house asylum seekers. But that never happened. In December 2002, the Caythorpe Action Group was formed to fight any proposal to use the site as an asylum centre, and they won their battle. So then, Caythorpe Court was acquired by PGL. They now operate it as a centre for adventure-based holidays for adults and children. PGL spent an initial £2 million on the centre, building a man-made lake, an orienteering course and archery facilities, with an all-weather pitch, a theatre and a bar, and even a rifle range too. Caythorpe Court would be used as a residential activity centre for school groups during term time and as a centre for family activity breaks in school holidays. The site has also been used in other ways too. In 2013 it was used as a strategic evacuation centre by Lincolnshire County Council in response to the East Coast tidal surge that December. Caythorpe Court has annually supported the Arnhem Memorial Weekend too, providing accommodation to visiting veterans of the 216 Airborne Signals Regiment and their families. And that's been Caythorpe, probably one of the lesser known villages in Lincolnshire, all things considered, but one that comes alive every September to celebrate its wartime heroes. Tomorrow we're going deeper into South Kesteven as we take on not just one village, but 3 of them, all within the same parish. Join me for more very soon. Hello people, welcome back to South Kesteven once again. Now, there's a church behind me there. That's one of at least 2 religious buildings we'll be seeing in this particular parish, because there's more than one village here. I'm in a place called Brandon. There's another one here called Gelston, but the main name of this place is Hough on the Hill. Hough on the Hill, enclosure on a hill. For your Wednesday episode this week, I've got a 3 for the price of 1 job for you. This is the parish of Hough on the Hill, which contains not just one village, but 3 of them. They are Hough on the Hill, Brandon and Gelston. The main village sits close to a significant rise in the Lincolnshire landscape called Lovedon Hill, which gives its name to the electoral ward in these parts. Lovedon Hill is also responsible for the name Hough on the Hill. Civilisations were drawn to the hill, and a lot of them set up settlements on it and around it. Hough on the Hill is just the latest in a long line. Lovedon Hill is around 7 7 miles away from Grantham. It was the site of a significant Anglo-Saxon settlement, evidenced by way of extensive Saxon remains across the area. Later, a medieval Motte and Bailey castle was built on this relatively high ground, not on Lovedon Hill itself, but on a mound in Hough-on-the-Hill, taking advantage of the natural topography. Hough's church, dedicated to All Saints, is built on the remains of the castle mound today. It has a Saxon tower with an unusual circular staircase. Hough Priory was located here too, dependent on the Augustinian Abbey of Notre-Dame-de-Vaux in Cherbourg. It was founded in 1164 and dissolved in 1414. In 1432 it was granted to the Carthusian Order of Mount Grace. There are no remains of it now, but the earthworks that remain offer the best clue as to its existence. Hough-on-the-Hill otherwise has a pub called the Brownlow Arms and a Grade 2 listed shop and post office. That's without considering Brandon and Gelston, which will also have their moments in the sun here. Let's get going, shall we? We begin our journey across Hough-on-the-Hill parish by first of all taking on the two small villages that accompany the main one. This is Brandon, close to the border with Fulbeck. Brandon's main landmark is this church, a chapel of ease to its mother building at Hough-on-the-Hill. The current building is generally the result of an 1870s restoration by Charles Kirk of Sleaford. However, it includes fragments of Saxon stonework whose origin is uncertain, as well as a Norman door. Its style is early English with both decorated and perpendicular features. The Norman features tell us that this originated in the Norman era, built by the local lords for their own benefit and prestige. Nobody seems to have a clue what this church looked like before its restoration, or how it developed over the centuries. In essence, it's a single-celled chapel with no sign that there was ever any separation into a nave and a chancel. There is a windowless north aisle that's so shallow it's functionally useless. Looking at the structure of the building, it would seem perhaps that the north aisle roof would have once been higher than it is today. It might also have been wider and therefore more usable. That would also suggest the nave roof was higher than it is too now. I'm not going to pretend that this is a church you should visit for its architecture. Apart from the Norman tympanum, it's all pretty ordinary. That said, our rural churches are a rich tapestry, telling us the story of our past. Brandon has a place in that story. This is otherwise a small village just west of the River Brant, from which the place gets its name. It means hill by the River Brant. Brandon is the sort of place you'd describe as a deeply rural and little known community. If you imagine it in the context of a railway network, it's like a rarely used siding. Weirdly, that is of course what attracts its residents. It's so far away from major civilization that it's a tranquil place to retreat to after the hurly-burly of the modern working day. Aside from the church, the only other notable building here is Brandon Old Hall, built in the 16th century. It's built of both dark and light gold bands of ironstone with some narrow bands of blue lias. The garden is walled in the same unique style. Brandon has several medieval earthworks which identify a toft. Hollow ways and other earthwork boundaries have been identified around the village too. In the Domesday Book, Brandon was called Brandune, but there was no mention of a church back then. Various high-profile names were mentioned in the account, the most important being Gilbert de Ghent, who we already know a little bit about. There's plenty of archaeological evidence that the area around Brandon, Gelston and Hough has been settled for a very long time. Now, to get between Brandon and our next location, Gelston, we have to leave the parish boundaries for a little while. There is a track that links the two villages together, but it's not ideal for cars. In fact, trying to drive on it would be a little foolish in all honesty. It's rough and rugged. You can walk it though. Typically, seeing as we're in Lincolnshire, the landscape around here appears fairly flat, but it's not. If you try to walk between Brandon and Gelston, you need to be prepared. It's actually quite hilly. What we're doing by using this road is coming around an ancient rise in the landscape called Lovedon Hill. As the highest hill around here for some distance, Lovedon Hill was supposedly a meeting place for early wapentake summons. The word wapentake, by the way, means show your weapon. That's what the Romans and the Saxons no doubt did on Lovedon centuries ago. It's known to have been the site of both Roman and extensive Anglo-Saxon activity. This is something that archaeologists have proven. There was known to be a Roman site at Lovedon and one at Hough-on-the-Hill too, by the way. Lovedon was definitely more of a Saxon location though. It was the site of a massive Anglo-Saxon cemetery which had a huge number of both burials and cremations. The Lovedon Hill Cemetery is one of the largest Saxon burial places ever found in England. Initial excavations in the 1920s found some 45 urns. Between 1955 and 1963, another 500 were found, all containing Saxon cremations. They were possibly interred in or beneath barrows. The largest find on Lovedon came in 1972 when 1,245 cremations and 32 burials were located on the hill, along with a huge array of grave goods like glass claw beakers, a Coptic bowl and pottery. It's fair to say that Lovedon was a Saxon stronghold. It makes perfect sense though when we consider what we're about to find in Hough on the Hill. First though, we have Gelston to explore. Okay, you wouldn't have seen Lovedon Hill from the car because the angle the camera points on the dashboard, it's never away to the left, it's always straight ahead, as it should be. If you do drive that road though from Brandon to get to Gelston, if you look to your left hand side, you'll see the rise in the landscape, and that is the very historic Lovedon Hill. Now we've made it to Gelston, here we go, and I am currently stood in the old village pinfold, which is square. As you can see, it's not a round one. Pinfolds were normally round, weren't they? But this one was square. Lovely little restored pinfold. You can take a seat in here. There's a nice bench which you can sit on and admire the landscape all around you. It's quite nice, isn't it? On a day like today, why not? Now, what else does Gelston have? Well, not a lot, to be fair. It's got this gorgeous village green though. So let's talk a bit about this place. We're not going to be here very long, and then we'll move on to Hough on the Hill. So this is Gelston, which is around 1 mile to the southwest of Hough on the Hill. Gelston as a place name means a farmstead or a village of a man called Goffel. Gelston is referred to in the Domesday Book as Chevel's Tune. It was in the manor of Hough on the Hill and in the Lovedon Hundred of Kesteven. It had 26 households, 18 villagers, 6 smallholders and 2 freemen, so it wasn't small. It hasn't really grown much since though, so these days we consider it tiny. Gelston has no church, but it did once have a Wesleyan Methodist chapel. It was built in 1839, closed in 1958, and it's now a private residence. Gelston's main feature is a limestone cross on the village green, dating from the 15th century. It's Grade 2 listed and is a scheduled ancient monument. The village cross shows us a good example of a stepped base that once belonged to a medieval structure. It's believed to stand in or near its original position on the village green. Leaving Gelston behind us, now we need to make the short trip to Hough on the Hill. The name Hough is Old English. It derives from the word hagger, which means enclosure. The village is listed in the Domesday Book twice as Hag and Hatch. It's not clear when On the Hill was added to its name. It comprised 45 households, 4 mills and a church at that time. That was astronomically large in those days, but there was a really good reason for that. You see, Hough's location in a hilly area meant it was perfect for early settlers. The undulating landscape would have acted like a natural fort that could be easily defended. Let's have a look. Okay, we've made it to the very leafy Hough on the Hill. There are plenty of trees around here, affording some natural shade for me, which is a good thing. Now, most of this episode, the remainder of this episode, should I say, is going to be based around what's in the centre of Hough on the Hill. Now, these trees provide a bit of cover, so you can't really see it all that well. But over there, there is a castle mound, believe it or not. There is somewhere in there. Let's see if we can find it and tell you a bit about it. We begin our walk around the small village of Hough on the Hill at what is perhaps the biggest landmark, literally. This is a mound where there was once a castle. A medieval Motte and Bailey effort, the castle was built on a natural mound known as Castle Hill, part of which is now occupied by the present church. It's an ancient scheduled monument. The castle was almost certainly made of timber. It's not known for sure when it was dismantled or demolished, and nobody knows exactly how old it was. As mottes go, this one is substantial and still largely intact, except for the western edge where a former playground has cut into its side. Traces of earthworks around the church and churchyard may have been part of the ditch to the castle's bailey, but nobody's really sure of that. Some believe we're possibly dealing with a pre-conquest earthwork here, especially since there is some late Saxon work in the tower of the church. The castle may have originated as a Saxon thanal burh. It's known for sure that the manor here was held by Earl Ralph of Lincolnshire and Norfolk. The diameter of the mound's top, which is overgrown now, is about 75 feet. 20 metres east of the motte there's a pond bay, which may be contemporary with the earthwork. This whole site is partly bounded by a stream, and modern building has encroached onto the north and west sides of the bailey. Part of the bailey bank is visible to the southwest of the motte, but elsewhere it's been mutilated by later paths and buildings. Modern features have destroyed any evidence of the northwest side. Close to the site of the castle is an old school and schoolhouse which were built in 1867. Although close to the castle mound, they're outside of the protected scheduled area. As far as education goes in Hough, the first known school in the village was built by Earl Brownlow in 1845. That was replaced by this school and the teachers' residence. Hough School was closed in the mid-1980s despite opposition from the locals. It was due to a declining attendance, and today local children attend school in Caythorpe instead. On part of Castle Hill is Hough's Grade 1 listed church dedicated to All Saints and built of ironstone and limestone. It dates back to the 10th or the 11th century and was last restored in 1845. Sitting within the castle's bailey, it contains monuments to the Payne family and is notable for its Saxon tower with an unusual circular stairway. All Saints Church is a very distinctive and ancient building. The lower sections of the west tower and unusual circular western stair turret are the oldest parts. The nave walls are also ancient, but the remainder of the building, including the north and south aisles, the clerestory, the chancel, the north chapel and the upper stage of the tower, are newer. They date variously from the 13th through to the 15th centuries. That gives it a collection of various architectural styles reflecting its long history. The church also includes historical elements like a 14th century coffin-shaped slab with a richly carved cross. Now, this church might be the main religious building in Hough on the Hill these days, but there was a time when it wasn't. Just to the south of the church and the castle mound, there's an array of earthworks, and those mark the site of Hough Priory. We need to walk across them to get to our next area. Next, we have to walk across a huge patch of earthworks as we cross the village from west to east. This is Hall Close, and it was the site of Hough Priory. Hough Priory, dependent on the Augustinian Abbey of Notre Dame de Vaux in Cherbourg, was founded in 1164 and dissolved in 1414. There are no remains of it today, aside from these earthworks, of course. It was fairly insignificant anyway, despite the size of Hall Close. The parent abbey itself, at its foundation, contained only an abbot and 4 canons, and the cell had no other endowment than the manor and the church of Hough. Hough was a cell for a prior and chaplain, but the latter was withdrawn in the early 14th century. After its suppression, it was granted to Mount Grace Priory at Osmotherley in North Yorkshire. It was already in a poor condition by that time anyway. An inquisition of the property was taken in 1349 when the priory's mill was noted to be broken and useless. Nearly all of the surrounding trees had been cut down, and almost everything of value in the house had been sold to supply money to the exchequer. Most of the chantries founded in the priory church had lapsed, as the prior could not serve them all by himself. The earthwork remains were surveyed in 1992, and there was some limited excavation. A fish pond, a house platform, and the remains of a wall were all identified by the survey. Between 1995 and 1998, the Grantham Archaeology Group conducted another. Several features, including a path, drains, a platform, a rubble wall and a building, were recorded. None of those features could be accurately dated, nor was it clear whether they were associated with the priory at all. Now we go north as we form a loop around the rest of the village, skirting the edge of the castle mound as we do. Hough on the Hill is effectively based around that castle mound. Therefore, this is what geographers would refer to as a ring village. Modern housing has been built around its edges and on lanes that lead away from the village in various directions. It's a picturesque, historic village known for its elevated position and panoramic views. It's located about 7 miles north of Grantham and sits on a rise overlooking both the Trent and Belvoir Vale. In terms of property, the village features attractive former estate houses associated with the Brownlow family of Belton House. It's not overbuilt either. It's characterised by its various open spaces and historic buildings which provide those sweeping views of the surrounding countryside. Hough is known for its peaceful atmosphere and beautiful rural landscapes. It's a popular spot for dog-friendly walks and is considered a lovely place to live by many. There continues to this day to be a lot of archaeological work going on in the village thanks to its historic sites. It's abundantly very clear that Hough village has been inhabited for a very long time, and long may that continue. So, as we've already seen, the castle mound isn't actually all that obvious from the road where we began. Once you get onto these streets around the back of it, it's a different story. You can definitely tell that this was a castle mound. Here we go. Because in front of us here, there's a big dip, and of course that is the moat. And then, obviously the land rises up with the trees on top of it. That is the castle mound, or the back of the castle mound just there. And the church is kind of over in that direction, and the school up there. So if you imagine, we've just come around the back of those two buildings, and we're now seeing the rear of the castle mound. Like I said, you can't really see it from the road where we began, but here you definitely can. So I've just been 5 or so minutes without filming anything because there's no properties on the road I've just used. I've just hit New Hill. This will take us down towards the pub and towards the post office, which are the last two things on this walk. But just seeing as I'm here and I haven't got anything else to show you, I thought I'd show you the sort of views I've got. It's hilly because, you know, we are on the Lincoln Cliff, but isn't it beautiful? All around me I have wonderful Lincolnshire countryside. Beautiful, isn't it? Hough on the Hill's a great place. I've never been here before, and I'm kind of wondering why not. But there we are. I know the Lincoln Cliff can be steep at times. I think this is Derbyshire in disguise right now, because Hough on the Hill is certainly not an inaccurate name. Climbing New Hill to get to the pub, quite a lot of effort, let me tell you. We're nearly there though. I'll just show you where we are. That's the pub in front of us. To finish the walk off, we have the one and only pub in the entire parish. This is a 17th century country inn with a history tied to Lord Brownlow, who once owned it. For that reason, it's known as the Brownlow Arms. This pub is also known for its old-fashioned country hospitality and tranquil, relaxing atmosphere, as well as modern comforts, of course. The building itself, with its handsome sandstone exterior, retains the feel of a country house, and so it should, seeing as it was once a house itself. On the way back to the car, we also passed the post office, a Grade 2 listed 17th century shop with an attached house. Again, it's built of ironstone, but with some red brick thrown in for good measure. It's a lovely way to finish off our walk around Hough on the Hill. And we have completed another parish in South Kesteven, with Hough on the Hill officially behind us. We have 2 more to cover this week, and tomorrow we hit a really small one. Around here there are plenty of large villages with even larger histories. The same can't be said of the next one really, but it's still got a bit for us to enjoy. See you there. Welcome back to South Kesteven, everybody. Now, we've seen quite a few big villages of late in this particular part of Lincolnshire. This one is going to take me all of about half an hour, if that. It's just a simple linear village that runs along a stretch of the A607. Welcome to Normanton. Normanton, Norseman's Farm. So far this week we've seen some pretty big villages and ones that have quite the storied past. Time to take our foot off the gas slightly for this next one though. This is Normanton, one of the smallest parishes in South Kesteven and in Lincolnshire as a whole. Known as Normanton-on-Cliff to most of its inhabitants, this village occupies little more than a mile's worth of the A607, 7 miles north of Grantham. It's got a now redundant parish church dating from the 11th century, dedicated to St Nicholas of Myra. It's a Grade 2 listed building in the care of the Church's Conservation Trust. Otherwise, it has an early 19th century milestone and a village pump, which is Grade 2 listed as a scheduled monument. That stands next to the A607. Now, we could so easily leave it at that because Normanton doesn't have much more. Do you think we will though? Nah, of course not. Even though this one's only going to take us around 10 minutes to walk from end to end, we've covered smaller in our time. Normanton's ancient history is not known, or at least not accurately. It originated as a settlement for an isolated cluster of Norwegians who came over to England with the Danes in the 10th century. Later it was an estate village owned by the powerful Brownlow family and heavily reliant on farming. Like many an estate village, it's now all been sold off and it's lost a lot of its community feel. The A607 hasn't aided that either. It's turned Normanton into a village that just gets driven through a lot and not really stopped in. Every village needs its 15 minutes of fame, so let's put this tiny place on the map. Let's see what it can tell us about life in South Kesteven. We start this short walk through Normanton at the northern end of the village. We're on the A607 here, the main Lincoln to Grantham road. Normanton, or if you will, Normanton-on-Cliff to its residents, is a simple linear development running along the A607 from north to south. It's as simple as a village can get. Normanton is a rural settlement and still very much reliant on agriculture. The name derives from 2 Old English words, Norman and Tun, meaning the village of the Norwegians. The history of Normanton is not very well recorded. Parish records only go back to 1670, and beyond that it's a little sketchy. The chances are it originated as an isolated settlement of Norwegians who accompanied the Danes in the settlement of Lincolnshire before 920 AD. It was mentioned in the Domesday Book as Norman Tun when it was part of the estates of Robert de Vesey. He had a castle, or perhaps a fortified manor house, at Caythorpe, just up the road. In 1754, an Act of Enclosure was passed for Normanton. The village at the time consisted of 20 homesteads and a few cottages. The lord of the manor was Lord Brownlow. The Industrial and Agrarian Revolutions saw the population gradually decrease from 204 in the 1830s to 143 in 1896. By 1901, the motor car had become a common sight passing through the village, and so that remains today along the A607. Gradually, throughout the 20th century, Normanton lost its traditional village community, which had lasted previously for some 2,000 years perhaps. With few landmarks left to speak of, Normanton is one of those villages that you drive through and rarely stop at for whatever reason. It does have a couple of things though. Let's have a look. This here is a yard that belongs to a transport company called Rainthorpe. They are maybe one of the lesser known logistics companies in the UK, but they still have a crucial role to play. Founded in 1958, Rainthorpe have been providing transport solutions to customers across the UK and Europe for over 60 years. Their years of experience and the fact they have a highly skilled in-house fabrication team mean that they've developed custom-built equipment to transport machinery from A to B. With a wide range of trailers, they're equipped to transport everything from combine harvesters to fishing trawlers. Unlike many others, they don't subcontract any of their work. Instead, they handle everything in-house, supported by a team of experienced drivers who bring traditional expertise to every job. So it's taken me all of 6 minutes to walk from the village sign at the northern end of Normanton to Rainthorpe's yard, and that tells you just how small a place this is. We're about halfway down this road towards the church, which is the last landmark. Now, it's not all on the A607 Normanton. There is another road that comes off it to the east. Let's have a look at that next. Not far from their yard, dead opposite in fact, there's a road called Heath Lane. This has pretty much the only inhabited area of Normanton that's not on the A607. Heath Lane is a dead end and runs into the countryside between here and the B6403 at Ancaster. There are a collection of farms up here which add to Normanton's modest business hall. Back to the A607, next we have a pump. It's a listed building that stands next to a bus stop right in the centre of the village. You can tell it's a pump thanks to the ironwork upon it, but look a little closer. It's actually more than just a water feature. This is also an old milestone, and carved into the stonework there are distances to towns both near and far. The stone states from Lincoln 18 miles, from Grantham 7 miles, from London 117 miles. This stone is exactly the same as a sister milestone at Belton, with different distances of course. And the house next door to the milestone makes reference to the milestone because it's called Milestone Lodge. That one there. Now, let's continue. Underneath the shade of this tree, there's a couple more houses and a phone box on the left-hand side, right there. And once you get beyond all these, you're then in the vicinity of Normanton's church, which looks really, really big. Let's see if it actually is. Now we're at the church dedicated to St Nicholas. Its larger-than-life look suggests that it's quite an important building, but it's not these days. St Nicholas is a redundant Anglican church, but it's still a designated Grade 2 listed building. It's under the care of the church's Conservation Trust. At first glance, this one may appear to be Victorian, but closer inspection reveals much earlier origins. Much of the remaining medieval carving kind of gives it all away. The church dates from the 11th century, with additions and alterations made during each of the following 4 centuries. Further changes were made in 1845 when the vestry was added and the chancel and the north wall of the nave were largely rebuilt. The church was declared redundant in February 1974. Constructed in limestone and ironstone rubble, just like many other buildings in South Kesteven, its plan consists of a 3-bay nave with a clerestory, north and south aisles, and a south porch. There's a 2-bay chancel at a lower level with a north vestry and a west tower. The tower is in 3 stages and it has a splayed base. The tower arch dates from the late 12th century and the chancel arch from the 13th. The pulpit is 17th century. Over the tower arch are the royal arms of George IV. Inside the church, above the easternmost arch of the south aisle, is a mysterious opening which resembles a blocked window. It's cut by the 12th century arcade, suggesting that it might be part of the original 11th century building. Its exact purpose is unknown because of its atypical shape. Now here's a fun fact too. Commemorated by plaque, electric lighting was first installed here by Thomas Chambers in memory of his only son, John, who died in World War II, aged 20. The churchyard also contains the war grave of a Royal Field artillery soldier from World War I. From it, you get some delightful views across the rolling countryside around Normanton. And so, with the church visited, all we have to do now is turn around and head back north again to where this all began. Like I said, Normanton is really small. So I've just made a stop back at the bus shelter on the walk back up to the car because there's a parish notice board in here, and Normanton-on-Cliff is now officially done. Time to drive out of the village and head towards the last one in the run. We've seen a really good collection of parishes so far this week, and I reckon this last one is my favourite. It's got a lot for such a small village. We'll be talking about railways a lot in the next one, and what they did for the local area. See you soon. Hello folks, welcome back to South Kesteven for the last episode this week. Now we've seen some beautiful villages along the A607 this week, haven't we? Well, here's one to finish it all off. This is the parish of Carlton Scroop. Carlton Scroop, free peasants' farm belonging to the Scroop family. Ending this week's run of parishes in South Kesteven, we have the lovely Carlton Scroop. What a great name that is, right? Carlton Scroop is situated just under 6 miles northeast of Grantham, and the A607 between that town and Lincoln passes through the centre of the village. Carlton was listed in the Domesday Book as Carltune. Scroop as a suffix would be added later because most of the village was owned at one time by the Scroop or Scrope family. I'm sure we've heard that name before. Oh wait, yes we have. They last appeared in Langer when we were in Rushcliffe. Carlton Scroop is situated below the Lincoln Cliff, the escarpment edge that separates the Wolds from the Trent Vale. On the cliff 1 mile to the north is Normanton, whose population is usually included with admin and stats for Carlton. The Viking Way long distance footpath passes through the village too. So what does Carlton have for us then? Well, quite a bit in fact. Carlton was once bisected by a railway line that crossed 2 of the main village streets. All that remains of the line today are a pair of old bridges at the points where the railway met the road. It was the Grantham and Lincoln line, which we met before. It ran alongside the village's biggest landmark, Sudbrookmoor Golf Club, which unlike the railway is still very much going. East of that is Carlton Hall, whilst to the west is the church dedicated to St Nicholas. Carlton also has a village hall, an old school, and the site of a former Cold War microwave mast, abandoned in 1968 and now demolished. So there's quite a bit here then. Let's go walking and see it all. We start our walk around Carlton Scroop in the southwestern corner of the village. This is Main Street, which defines the southern extent of Carlton, and it's part of the A607. It's a bit sporadic in terms of buildings, and it's all very modern down here. Walk to the east though, and soon things start to change. Carlton has a massive village green. It occupies a triangle of land where Hough Lane meets Main Street, right before the church. This looks delightful, and it's a sign of what's to come. Our first main landmark is Carlton Scroop's Grade 1 listed Anglican church dedicated to St Nicholas. Parts of the fabric are Norman, although the most obvious features are decorated. The east window, depicting 2 kneeling figures each holding a shield, is an example of 14th century medieval stained glass. Called the Newmarch window, it dates from 1310. The base of the tower is 12th century and the upper part is from 1633, constructed after the former steeple collapsed in 1630. The traceried stone font here is more than 500 years old, and the pulpit is Jacobean, dating back to the 17th century. The south aisle window is an early work of Charles Eamer Kemp. The church was last restored in 1878. Today, St Nicholas's Church is what's known as a festival church. It's open daily for visitors and private prayer. Carlton Scroop was once split into two parts by the route of a railway line. It crossed the village in two places, Main Street and Newark Lane. All that remains of the railway cutting, which has now been filled in, are the parapets of two bridges. This here is the one on Main Street. The line in question was the Grantham and Lincoln Railway. It opened in 1867 and later became part of the Great Northern Railway. It was closed during the beaching cuts of 1965. The line branched north from the Poacher Line, the one that runs through Ancaster. You can still see the old junction on overhead maps. Now, if you stand on this bridge, you can see a memorial below its arches to the south. That's nothing to do with the railway line, that's everything to do, though, with a wartime plane crash. In late December 2024, the memorial you can see from the bridge was installed within the grounds of Sudbrook Moor Golf Club. It commemorates the decorated American combat veterans killed in a mid-air collision over Lincolnshire 80 years ago. 7 men were killed in the collision during a training flight over Carlton Scroop on December 18, 1944. The incident involved 2 aircraft. One was a US Air Force 61st Troop Carrier Group C-109, and the other was a B-24 Liberator named Lazy Lou. The C-109 came down close to the village school, and wreckage also fell in a field next to what is now part of the golf club. Local author David Bristow has written a book about the incident. It's called What Happened to You, Lazy Lou? Well, I can answer that. Lazy Lou tried, but just failed to reach RAF Cranwell. It crash-landed and broke up near North Rossby, and we saw a memorial to that crash in the North Rossby episode. Bristow's father was a pupil at the school in Carlton Scroop at the time, and he had a narrow escape, seeing as the plane literally just missed the building. The unveiling of the memorial attracted about 100 people, including the families of the men, along with British and American service personnel. 3 men survived the accident, but the rest perished. Also among the dead was the squadron's mascot Dalmatian dog. He actually survived the crash initially, but loyal as he ever was, when he tried to run to find his master, his injuries proved too great. So, as well as photographs of both crews, the memorial features a tribute to the dog. His name was Major Jerry, and he belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Frederick. Major Jerry travelled with Colonel Frederick for campaigns in North Africa, Sicily, Italy and Northern Europe. Supposedly, he was a bit of a genius. It was said he could spot other aircraft in the air before the crew, and it was considered good luck to rub his back. Yeah, fascinating story that about the air crash and Major Jerry. What a good dog. What a good dog. I wonder if there's any dogs in the RAF like that these days. Who knows? Anyway, next up we need to talk about the golf club, which is where you can find that memorial. You've just seen it from the bridge, which I'm still stood on. The golf club is right there. The memorial is just one reason why you should visit the golf club. There are others. I mean, golf is probably the main one. That's just a hunch, you know. It's easy for you to play golf here, actually. The club was created and developed by award-winning PGA professional Tim Hutton and is managed with the help of his wife Judith and his family. Hutton started his career as an assistant professional to 5-time Ryder Cup captain Di Reese and travelled extensively as a tournament player. He was club professional at Sleaford Golf Club for 12 years before designing and building Sudbrook Moor. Sudbrook Moor is an ideal setting for both starters and more experienced players. The course is testing without being too demanding upon your stamina. The holes here range from 130 to 430 yards in terms of length. It has practice facilities including a driving range, a putting green, a chipping green and a practice bunker. The original course of 6 holes was laid out in 1986. This was followed by the purchase of another larger field in 1990, when 9 more holes joined the fray. Following the acquisition of the old railway line in 1997, the course was redesigned with 2 further completely new holes. This provided a more spacious setup with added length. The practice ground, which was once part of the first fairway, now stands alone. The driving range, coaching bay, golf shop, mower store and changing facilities were developed in 2005. Sudbrook Moor Golf Course is maintained and developed with the latest techniques and equipment of Fine Turf, one of the country's leading turf care companies. With a policy of ongoing improvements and refinements, Sudbrook Moor is now considered to be among the best golf courses in the area. Now we're at Main Street's junction with Charity Street, and there used to be a pub on this corner. It was called the Coach and Horses. It was a pub with a history tied to the village's development, particularly with its role as a stopping point for coaches and its agricultural and quarrying past too. The building itself is thought to date back to the mid to late 18th century. It still stands, but it's long since closed down as a pub. Today it's a house, and the nearest pub to Carlton is Hough's Brownlow Arms. So if you're a golfer and you fancy trying Sudbrook Moor out, you need to be on Charity Street to find the entrance. That's where I am right now. Here's the entrance to the golf club, Sudbrook Moor Golf Club and Golf Range, as it says right there. We'll walk past this and we'll continue down Charity Street. Now we've come north for a short way up the A607 to its junction with Newark Lane. Along here is where you find Carlton Scroop and Normanton Village Hall. A shared facility between the two villages, a village hall of some kind has been here since the mid-1970s, but this current building seems to be much newer than that. I didn't find out a lot about this one in all honesty, so let's move on down Newark Lane towards the second of the two railway bridges. This bridge is about halfway down Newark Lane, where the Grantham to Lincoln line swept its way under the road. Again, all that remains are the parapets of the old bridge. We have met this line before in several places actually. This is the same line that Caythorpe Station, which we covered earlier on this week, was on. It's also featured in places like Leadenham, Navenby, Harmston and Waddington in North Kesteven. The railway nuts should all head to those episodes after this one to check out those former stations. Carlton Scroop never had a station of its own. The nearest was at Caythorpe. Today, Carlton Scroop's nearest station is Ancaster, just to the east. Let's move on to our final landmark now, which is around the bend on Hough Road at the end of Newark Lane. This is Carlton's old school, known formerly as the Old Stone School according to a nameplate on its wall. Education in this village was fairly rudimentary. A single-storey building, this was a parochial school and later it became a national school. Along with the schoolmaster's house next door, it was built in 1841. This school served the parishes of Carlton Scroop and Normanton, the latter of which never had a school of its own. Although a house now, you can tell this was a school just by looking at it. It's retained its coursed limestone and pitched gable roof of slate, as well as its cute little bell gable. The school was built at a cost of £500, with Earl Brownlow contributing £200 from his own pocket. The building was last restored in 1886 and then enlarged in 1896 to hold 95 children. Carlton's school closed in 1961 and all of the senior pupils transferred to the Sir William Robertson School in Welbourne. The juniors would go to Caythorpe or to Ancaster. So the last shot of the school there came from inside Carlton Scroop's very tiny cemetery. I'll just show you where I'm sat here on this bench. You'll see there are all of, I think, 4 graves in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not very many, but there's plenty of space for any more, I suppose, should they come along, when they come along. So yeah, that's Carlton Scroop's cemetery. Now just before we wrap up this episode, there is one more thing to talk about. You might have seen it as we've been walking around, but Carlton Scroop has a very tall radio mast that stands on a hill above the village. It's on Heath Lane and I would go and see it, but I don't think there's much space to turn my car around up there. So for that reason, here's a couple of pictures of it. Now, before we sign this one off, here's one final piece about the airwaves around Carlton, because they've been used extensively down the years. Carlton once had a microwave tower which formed part of a Cold War emergency microwave communication system called Backbone. A Cold War era bunker of the Royal Observer Corps was built in 1965 and abandoned in 1968, and it's now demolished. There is still a mast outside the village. That forms part of a microwave telephone link from London to Scotland, and you can find it on Heath Lane. Yes, so all that's left is to make my way back to the car, and just before I do, I just noticed this as I walked out of the cemetery there. Look at this for a piece of topiary on the end of the road here. What is that? Is that a duck? Is it a duck? Maybe it's a swan. No, it's not a swan. It ain't got a long neck. I think it's a duck. It's great, isn't it? Someone spent a lot of time making that. That looks fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. You only get that in the countryside, don't you? And folks, there ends another working week and another run in South Kesteven. We are steaming through these now and will soon be at the halfway point. I will be back to South Kesteven in a couple of weeks. I'll be taking on 2 close to the border with Melton on the other side of Grantham. See you there very soon, but it's bye for now. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.